One of my favorite quotes that I still to this day live by is, it's not that we set our goals too high and miss them, but that we set them too low and we make them. Hi, my name is Althea Stevens. I'm a council member for District 16 and the Youth Services Chair, and this is my SYEP story. I was born and raised in Harlem, New York. I had a very interesting childhood, just of growing up around my uncle, who was a Black Panther, who would always tell me stories about the Black Panthers. And, you know, I had a West Indian root, so we always went to St. Thomas for the summers. So when I think about most summers, I was not here until I was a teenager when I first started SYEP. So I grew up in the early 90s, and as you guys know, New York looked very different than it did now. You know, there was a lot of poverty. Crack was a huge deal in the city, and the community I grew up, it was one of those things that you did see, and it was prevalent. However, it was still very much a community. It was still very much a place where everyone helped everyone. Family was the whole entire block. If you were home late from school, you could go to a friend's house and have dinner. You know, there was always someone around. Someone was always watching. And you couldn't do nothing. Although we didn't have social media, you couldn't do anything because someone would tell your mother if they saw you doing something that you wasn't supposed to be doing. So I found out about SYEP because my older sister did SYEP since she had been old enough to do it. So my sister's 4 years older than me, so she had been doing SYEP. I believe at the time she had to be like 14, so she had started when she was 14. So that's how I knew about SYEP. Funny story is, I actually worked at a summer camp, which was my first job, was working at a summer camp, and I hated it. It was so crazy. Those kids drove us crazy. And I was a very young person, like trying to get little kids to listen and have fun and not be hot. And also, I felt like I was a kid, and I probably felt like I should have been in a camp. So that was my first experience with SYEP. But what's also interesting is later on, when I started working at Henry Street, one of the things, they were a SYEP site. So I also used to teach the workforce piece. Although I wasn't a SYEP participant, but I would teach SYEP, the workforce piece, to the participants who were in the Henry Street settlements program. So my first day of SYEP, it was Riverbank State Park. That's the camp that we worked at. And I remember the first day I got there because I started a little bit late. I didn't start when everyone else started. So it was like me going, getting my t-shirt, introducing me to the kids. And I was just really nervous, right? I had always babysat and worked with young people, but it was very different being in an actual camp and having a group of like 16 kids. And, there was obviously a group leader for working with them who was also very young. So it was just a very interesting, nerve-wracking situation. And I was very quiet. I sat in the corner. If they asked me to do something, I would do it. But otherwise, I was pretty much a body for the first day because I was so nervous. I mean, the thing that for me that I think about now, and just thinking about the totality of the work that I've been doing for the years, it was like my window into the life that I would be living moving forward, right? Like, I've worked in youth development for 20 years. My first job that I had was working with kids and working in summer camps. And now being in city council and being the youth service chair, it is like my life has always been in full circle. So all of those things, and even having my first job in SYEP and working in a camp and now chairing this committee, also to me is just like full circle. So it's just really amazing to just have this opportunity and not knowing this trajectory that I would be on. Some of the challenges that I faced while working at SYEP was just being so young and kind of being thrown into it, right? There wasn't any training. There wasn't any like, okay, these are the things you need to do. It was very much, I showed up, I got my t-shirt, and he put me in a class. So that was really nerve-wracking. And so it's interesting because I ran camps for a very long time. And so we were very intentional about making sure that we gave the SYEP their own orientation, gave them activities, gave them specific jobs so that they could really have a handle, because I do feel like I didn't have that experience when I was working at SYEP, so I wanted to make sure that all the young people that came through our program had that experience and got something from it. And also we ended up hiring a lot of the SYEPs who worked with us in the summer to come on full time. So that was probably the thing that was most challenging, not having enough time, but also understanding it's a 6-week program, and so a lot of times it is kind of like trial by fire. What I think I would do differently if I could go back during my SYEP days is, I think, be more present. By the end of the summer, I was engaged with the young people and I was excited they knew me, but just really like being a lot more engaged and taking more advantage of the opportunity that was presented. Because like I said, it took a while for me to warm up, and I had an expectation that they should have told me more, but I should have asked more questions, which is probably why I ask so many questions now as an adult. My SYEP experience left a huge impact on me. I mean, I already said before, my life is always full circle, right? So seeing that my first job was working in a summer camp, and where I'm at now, it definitely had an impact. And at the time, I didn't know I had an impact, because I remember leaving camp being like, I don't ever want to work with kids. I remember saying that, like on the last day, I was like, I'm never doing this again. But you know, I think it pays homage to, like, you just don't know your path, and when you're young you have all these other expectations, and the reality is it was a glimpse into what my life would be and what my purpose was, which is to work on behalf of young people. I would like to say to all the young people who are starting SYEP, take full advantage of every opportunity. People do not realize that this workforce is just so small. And so a lot of times you will see a lot of these people on your road at other times, and you want to get as much out of every experience that you have. So be fearless, ask the questions, even when you feel uncomfortable, jump into things, even if you don't know if you know how to do it exactly, and be willing to make mistakes. And also build networks, right? I think another piece around SYEP is about how are you building networks. So not only how you're talking to your supervisors, how you're talking with your coworkers, and really making the connections, because you really just don't know who you'll see along the way as you're going through your career journeys. One of the reasons I ran for office was because young people felt like they didn't feel heard or they weren't part of this process. And so what better way for us as council members and elected officials across the city is to open our doors and actually have interns in our programs. And so like even some of our state electeds, they typically have interns when they're in Albany, but like also reaching out saying like, how can we have some interns, SYEP interns in your offices? And last year we had some of the highest numbers of council members taking SYEP interns, and it was just amazing. And I think we want to continue that. And my goal is before I leave is to have all 51 members be at SYEP site, because it's really just that important.